Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of Sphere of Success, where, as always, I say, being in business, it's not all a bed of roses. We often don't share the experiences that we have, which we think are less than brilliant, but boy, oh boy, do they happen. And sometimes they can happen on a daily basis. But it's how we frame that opportunity, how we look at adversity and challenge to thrive, to really look at that from a personal growth perspective, and maybe even look back and think that was the best thing that ever happened. And today I have the most amazing entrepreneur. She has an international business. She does what she says on the tin. She walks the talk. She doesn't just speak from a textbook. Now, Guinevere Ellis, she will help her clients through Effortless Global to maximize their wealth opportunity holistically, be the best that they can be. She will actually guide her clients and help them to navigate all of the issues and challenges to actually take the weight off their shoulders and go through their business lives. And also because we're not just hemmed in with business, we also have personal lives as well. So this will actually impact on an holistic basis all of our lives. That effortless approach, getting in the flow, finding that we can do more without so much resistance, and actually thinking about things which are joyous, abundant, getting into that positive space. And wouldn't we all want a bit of that? That sounds absolutely fantastic. So, Guinevere, welcome. It's lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Deborah.
No, it's my pleasure. And you come across again as somebody who is serene. I know that you had a little issue before you were traveling to the States before, and it was just like, okay, life happens. We just get on with it. It's no big drama. We don't let this spoil the show. We just carry on. And I would love our listeners to hear from your personal perspective, the real Guinevere Ellis behind your wonderful business. How is it that you've found this secret sauce from actually coming through and battling and donning the armor and doing battle, and it's exhausting, to actually find this unique way of actually doing business and finding that we can do things on an effortless basis?
So thank you so much, Deborah, for that question, because it leads me beautifully into my own story. And, we all, from to an extent, have a mess to success story. And so I'll share with you a little bit about mine. So I had always had fascination with human behavior and human decision making. From a very young age, and I'm talking, primary school level, 7, 8, 9, I was always fascinated by people and why they did what they did. And some early memories I have are of my auntie and my grandmother and other people that I knew smoking and thinking, why would they choose to do that? And being fascinated by the decision-making process behind something that is clearly unhealthy, as I thought from that young age. So I'd always had this fascination. But the thing is that in our society, we are not really encouraged to really, or at least we weren't back in my time, to really nurture that fascination. We're kind of, it's kind of, knocked out of us really, and we're taught to follow, traditional education and so on. And so I studied at school, studied hard at school, did well at school, was always seen as clever. And this concept of being clever is really important, as you'll see when I share my story. Because I was always told that I was clever, I could do anything I put my mind to, then obviously I believe that, because whatever we're told in our early years becomes part of our own identity. And so I did well through school, and then I decided to go to university, and I wanted to study psychology. Now, this comes back to this fascination I had with human behavior and also some incidences that happened in my own life. But my parents and my teachers and the headmaster of our school encouraged me to go down a professional path because it was safer, you're guaranteed a job, and so on. And so my father told me, you're not studying psychology. What does that even mean? You're going to do something, that's going to guarantee you a job. So I chose to do accounting, finance, and business. It wasn't really anything I had any interest in whatsoever, but I believed that's how you achieve success. So I went to university, I gained my degree, but I did do psychology. I chose a university where we could choose a minor. So my major was accounting and finance and business, and then my minor was psychology. So I studied psychology kind of as on a lower level. But I just loved that side of it. But I kind of had this belief that, oh yeah, that's just kind of a hobby or an interest. This is my career. So I left university with an honors degree in accounting and finance. And then I trained and qualified. I did a chartered management accounting qualification and I qualified. And then I started my career in the professional corporate world. Now, one of the interesting things here is that number one, I never enjoyed the subject, not studying it, not qualifying, and not even doing the work either. My personality was never really a good fit for sitting in front of a computer just doing Excel spreadsheets all day. But I believe that's how you achieve success. So that's what I did. But one of the things that might be interesting to your audience here is that so far, I've talked about something that is very similar for many people. We go to school, go to university, or whatever, and we follow a traditional path. But this is where my story kind of goes off in a different direction. When I just qualified as an accountant, I was 26 years old. I saw this job advertised as a head of finance for British Aerospace. And I thought, I'm going to go for that job. And everybody told me, you can't go for that. You've just qualified. That's for people with at least 10 years experience and is on the senior management team, of the factories in the UK that make all the wings for the Airbus aircraft. And I just thought, everyone was saying why would you go for that job? How would you even do it? And I kind of thought, I'll work it out. And so I went for the job and I had a belief that I could do anything I put my mind to because that's what I'd been programmed with growing up. So I went for the interview. I knew that I would be offered the role. I just knew I had this confidence. And of course, I was offered that position. Now, this is where it becomes interesting because I made a quantum leap. I fast forwarded over 10 years to get to that position. In fact, some people that I knew back then that just qualified as accountants are still in some of the early jobs that they got at that time and have never really, changed that. But I was never happy with ordinary success or ordinary life. So I made this quantum leap and I went for this role and I was there for 4 years. Now, this is interesting. If you can really get into, my mind at that time, I was 27 years old. I'm petite, I'm 5'4", and I was on the senior management team with all these I saw as older people. They were in their 40s and 50s. They were engineers, mainly, men. And I was on this management team. And when I started, I had no idea how I was going to do that job. But I knew that I could do anything I put my mind to. And therefore, I knew that I would learn it really quickly and I'd become, really good at that job. I stayed there for years and my career then progressed. I worked for the Argos Group, PGA, golf clubs. I worked for rank organizations. So I worked for a lot of well-known organizations in very senior positions. Now, I'd like to share here that I was not the best accountant. I was not the most technical, and I never worked long hours. Now, this is back in the 90s when people were working long hours, to prove their value or to prove their worth. And there was this culture where people would leave their blazer on the back of the chair so that it would look like they were working late, even if they'd gone home. But everyone was kind of bought into this culture. You have to work hard, play hard, work long hours. And I didn't want to do that. I was young. I wanted to go out and have fun with my friends. So I decided that I didn't need to work long hours. I decided that I gave enough value during the day and that I finished at 5. Now, you might think, well, how could you do that? how could you just leave? Even my team, I had large teams in finance departments work longer hours than I did. So you would ask, well, how could you do that? And this is the interesting point that links back to the work that I now do. I created this belief in my mind that I was so unique and valuable, and that the work that I did for the organization was beyond the need for long hours, that I provided enough value as the way that I did things, which was different to other accountants, and that my value was in the results that I helped the company achieve, not in the hours that I worked. And I just kind of brainwashed myself with that belief. And so throughout my whole career, I never worked long hours, never. And so people would say to me, how is it that you're always the one that gets the promotions or the big jobs or the big bonuses? I remember this friend of mine shaking her head saying, how did you get that big bonus? And you don't even work the hours that everyone else does. But I just believed that I provided a different level of value. Now, my work through, being an accountant, being a financial controller, CFO, and so on, was different to a traditional accountant in that my focus was always on the people, because of my interest in psychology. Like, how can the people help the company progress? So I started to do training and things for people in the organization so that they could understand the implications of the things they were doing day to day and how that affected the bottom line of the company's profitability and ultimately the security of their job. And so I was always thinking bigger than a traditional accountant. So carry on, this went on for over 20 years working in these kind of senior positions. I then also qualified in law. I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I knew that quite a lot of accountants, well, not a lot, but some accountants specialized in business recovery, so helping a company turn around. And I believed that that was something that I was good at, understanding how a company succeeds. So I decided to train in law to qualify as an insolvency practitioner. Now, this is another really interesting point here, that at the time, everyone said, oh, if you want to go into insolvency and business recovery work, you'll have to take a huge drop in salary, and you'll have to go back 10 years in your career, because you'll have to start at the bottom because it's a completely different industry and work your way up. And also you have to do these really difficult exams, and the pass rate for these exams was about 33% of people that took them would pass. So you'd have to do an exam in insolvency law for individuals, like personal bankruptcy and so on. Another law exam in administration of a company, and another one in liquidation of a company. And people said it'll take you 10 years of experience before you could even take those kind of exams. And I remember thinking, why would I want to believe that? So I decided that I was going to prove that that was not true. I decided I was going to self-teach myself the Insolvency Act and do the exams in 3 months' time. And so that's what I did. And I don't want this to come across as if I'm arrogant. Look at me, like I'm so good, because this isn't about that. I was not better than other people. This is about working with my mind in a very different way to most people. So most of us hear what other people say and take that on as fact. Oh, people say that it takes 10 years to get to that level, so I guess it does. And people say that those exams are really hard, so I guess they are. And so this is what, people tend to do. But I always worked with my mind in a very different way. And I thought, no, I don't want the results that those beliefs give me, i.e., take a pay job and go back 10 years in my career. I don't want that. So I'm going to choose the results I want, and I'm going to change the belief in my mind. Now, this is a good point to share, that I didn't realize what I was doing. It's just the way that I worked in my mind. I didn't realize I was doing it. I kind of thought everyone was probably doing the same. So I studied. I remember staying in the house and studying solidly for about 8 weeks, barely leaving the house. My neighbor even knocked on my door to see if I was still alive, because I was studying for these exams. And I passed them. And then I was a qualified insolvency practitioner in, less than 6 months. So I kind of then started to teach other people how to take those exams. And my approach was different in that other people would say, these are really hard exams. You have to work really, really hard at it. And I would say, They're not that hard. They're not that hard. You just have to have a system to follow. Now, this is the thing. It's our own mind that creates our success. So what I was doing was building this belief in people that it was actually not that hard. If you just follow this process that I'm teaching you, you can pass these exams, no problem. And then beliefs, you see, are self-fulfilling prophecies. So by sharing with other people, this is easy. I did it in like less than 6 months. I'd never even worked in that industry, and I did it. So then people started to, approach it in that way. But throughout all of this, Deborah, the key thing to talk about here, it sounds like I'm having this great career, but I was miserable. I didn't like that corporate space. I didn't like finance, business recovery. I found it, interesting initially, but then I didn't, because I found it a very negative environment, companies going through insolvency and so on, having to make lots of people redundant, a week before Christmas and this kind of stuff. I did not like that kind of industry either, really, because it's quite negative. Of course, this ties into the work that I do now, that we all have an innate genius, an innate talent that we do so naturally. It becomes so easy to us that we don't even realize it's a talent. And if we don't follow that, if we don't build our life around that talent, what happens is that we have this feeling inside, this feeling of discontent and dissatisfaction and frustration and feeling fed up. And my life worked like that. I was miserable, and I was getting all these promotions and these great jobs in inverted commas. What is a good job? I was earning a good 6-figure salary, and at the time I believed that that was good because that's what everyone told me. Not many people earn that kind of salary, so you're doing well. But I was miserable, and I talk about this mess to success, Deborah, and there's this one pivotal moment where it hit home for me. I had 2 children, so my children were very young. My son was 2, my daughter was 3. And I was going to work. I was working in practice at this point in a professional firm. And I was on the motorway on the M25. And I remember being stuck in traffic day after day on the M25. And on this particular day, the traffic stopped as if by divine guidance in front of this huge billboard that had a picture of a beach. It had a palm tree and sand and a turquoise sea and a bottle of Budweiser, I think, in the sand, right? So it was an ad for Budweiser. But I looked at it and I thought, there's got to be a better way of life. There's got to be. I have done everything that society told me, and my parents and my teachers and my professors. I have, I'm clever, and therefore I followed this professional path, and I've progressed in my career, and I earn a good salary, and I'm miserable. I was so unhappy. Excuse me. And that was the point that I decided, enough. I'm going to change my life. But I had no idea how. And this is the key, because people say to me now, oh, it's easy for you because I had no idea how at that point. No idea. And then as soon as I made this decision, ideas start to flow in my mind. And, fast forward now, we're 10 years later. I've built this phenomenal business with clients all over the world. I have Effortless Global, where I've created something called the Effortless Framework. And I have realized that my genius that I was mentioning earlier, my innate talent, is that I understand the human mind. I understand success. I understand how to create certain kinds of results. But I realized that most of the people don't really do it that way. So I developed the Effortless Framework, which is a framework that shows people exactly how to do it. And Deborah, this, you mentioned in the introduction about, I walk the walk. This is kind of evidence of that when I discovered, I had this aha moment. I went back and I plotted my whole life, every job I'd ever had, every pay rise, every relationship as well. And I could see what I was thinking at that time, where I was in my mental space, and how everything, success and failure, was caused by me, all of it. And therefore, I was able to see what works and what not to do. So I developed the Effortless Framework on the back of that work of tracking my whole life from the age of 7. And I understood exactly what creates success, and not just success like the society traditional, type of success that I had before, but true fulfillment and wealth and freedom. The three things that people think, oh, that's too hard to have. And let's not forget health, because without health, we have nothing. So, because I've developed the Effortless Framework, I show people how to work in a far more effortless way, how to achieve far more than they thought possible in a far shorter period of time. And so their mental well-being is enhanced dramatically, as well as they have that time recovery. So they have the time to look after themselves, to go to the gym or whatever it is they want to do for their health. So whilst it's focused on success, it is kind of affects your whole life, your relationships, and so on. And so, we have Effortless Global, we have these mentorship programs where individuals will go through the Effortless Framework and learn over 6 months exactly how to do it. And this is one key thing to note here, and everybody listening will probably relate to this. We are all taught, through school and university or whatever, we're taught to set a goal that's quite stretching, but realistic. Okay, so keep it real and then start working towards it. But the issue with that is that what you believe is realistic is completely false. It's so dramatically, it's so small compared to what you can actually achieve. I say to people, the only reason you would ever earn 6 figures a year is because you don't yet know how to earn 6 figures a month or a week or a day, which I've done since, that 6 figure a year that I used to earn for working full time for an organization for a year. I've done it in a day, not every day, of course, but I've done it in a day, I've done it in a week, and so on. Because it's inner architecture for outer results. That's what I class it as. So I work in this way through Effortless Global and through Guinevere Ellis International, where I work with people at the premium one-to-one level. And the way that I do it is, don't think about what's realistic. Don't think about what you've done in the past. Don't allow these thoughts that tell you, oh, what else would I do? How would I even start? Because I was like that too. I didn't know what else to do. But when I went and realized, which I do through the Effortless Framework, what my genius was, and I developed a brand around that, it becomes so much more effortless to achieve beyond what you thought possible. So this is what, for anyone listening, I would recommend that you do this. Decide what you want, not what's realistic. What do you really want? That's what it says on my website. That's what it says on my credit card. Not credit card, I mean business card. What do you really want? And then what we do is we work backwards from there. So once you've decided what you really want, now we'll show you how to believe it and how to realize the path to achieve it. So it's working in a very different way, in a far more effortless and rapid way than the traditional kind of style of success. So quite a long explanation there, Deborah, but it does share, my journey and my kind of mess. It wasn't quite mess, but it was in my mind. I was very unhappy, to achieving what I've achieved since.
Wow. My heart rate's gone up. I feel energized. You have an absolute blessing to give the world. It is so wonderful to hear you speak because we have been programmed to actually keep down, keep our thoughts low, keep the amazing things. If we think about the way in which we're made anyway, this is a miracle.
Absolutely.
And so why can't we achieve miracles? And this is I love this way of thinking because Henry Ford once said, if I'd gone to the marketplace and asked them while I was developing the automobile what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
It's that quantum, and by quantum, because in the spiritual context, the esoteric, the quantum is out there that we can actually manifest in ways which are that paradigm shift. It takes us out of one reality and into a whole new reality. And if we do that belief system, our own tiny, tiny limiting belief, we just cannot comprehend sometimes what is out there. And we listen to, and I've been listening to Elon Musk quite a bit because he's been involved in the presidential campaign, etc. And that guy didn't settle for normal belief systems.
Exactly.
He just said, no, I am capable of pretty much anything. And the amount of commitment, and this is something that you drew in, and I don't want this to be all about me, so I'll be bringing this back to you. I did something when I passed some financial planning exams, and everybody said I would take a year to do this. And I went, I don't want to take a year. Why should I wait a year? I did it
Exactly.
in 2 weeks. I sat down with a flask and the books, and I went through and I memorized everything because I thought, I'm not doing this for a year. No way. I want a life. And I passed. And it's that dedication. And you said you sat down and people were thinking, is she still alive?
Exactly.
And sometimes, without sounding like, I'm not being arrogant either, but it just remember I'd actually forgotten about it, which is great that you reminded me of it. Sometimes we have to make a sacrifice. And I'd like to have your view on the sacrifice, because it might not just be with this type of thing, this belief system that we've carried around knowingly or unknowingly. How do you help people let go and sacrifice that belief system so that they can bring something mind-blowing in instead?
Well, it's so interesting because when people start working with us, through any of our mentorships, then they have no idea how they're going to achieve what they want to achieve because and this is the key point here, they think that their beliefs are factual. Okay. So when they say, oh, it's not possible to achieve that, they don't think it's a belief, they think it's a fact. We all think that these things are facts. But it's the awareness when you understand. So one of the things that I do with clients is to, I say to people, we think in pictures. Okay. So if I say right now, do not think of a pink elephant, and you've heard that before, you're going to think of a pink elephant, right? So we think in pictures. So what most people do is they spend the majority of their time thinking in pictures of what they do not want. And when they think in this way, what happens is inside the brain, we have this reticular activating system. And what that does is it brings into our awareness only the things that are in line with what we believe to be true, because the mind, the human brain can't cope with all of the sensory things coming at it all day. So what happens when you have these negative beliefs is that you only see evidence of that. You don't see evidence of the opposite because you don't believe that it's true. So you're always seeing evidence of the positive. It's like if you I have a white Range Rover, and when I bought a white Range Rover, I realized that there are a lot of white Range Rovers on the road, and you've probably experienced this. Whereas, I'm sure there are a lot of red Audis, but I don't see them very often. I don't look for them. So this is how the mind works. So then one of the key aspects of the Effortless Framework is this belief set. We spend a month going through the beliefs and understanding how they were created, and the fact that you now believe them is creating your reality. And so there's a process that I've developed where you go through and dissolve them. And I want to use that word, dissolve, because this is not about techniques and tips and tools. People say, oh, can you give me a technique to stop this? They won't work because the way that we've been conditioned, the way the mind works, 95% of what we do every day is driven by the subconscious mind, and only, well, less than 5% by the conscious, educated, intellectual mind. So however much your intellectual mind wants to believe something different, I want to believe that it's possible for me to I don't know, become a millionaire in a year or whatever. However much you want to believe that, it's the part of the mind that wants it is not the part of the mind that is controlling your results. So without changing those core programming beliefs and habits and so on, you can't achieve what it is that you want. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter, how many books you read, how many YouTube videos you listen to. You can't do it. And that's why I've developed a system that takes 6 months to dissolve those blocks that are invisible to most of these individuals at the start. They don't realize it because they think that they're facts.
Yeah, our perception isn't reality. I'm a true believer in that. There's a whole raft of things that we have to. I listen to a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Don't know if you've
I
heard of
do.
Dr. Joe.
Yeah.
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 And it's actually being the person that is in the defined vision and embodying that person. Because you mentioned the arbitrary, who wouldn't want to be a millionaire? Well, actually, a lot of people couldn't cope with being a millionaire overnight because we see it all the time with the national lottery. It can actually destroy lives and bring people back to less than what they were before.
Yeah.
So it's being the person of that archetype that is the millionaire. And it's stepping into that person because there will be a whole framework with how you manage money, your relationship with money, how you manage your being with money, what you put into your body with money, how you view the world with money. And it has to be congruent. You have to be congruent with that energy.
Absolutely.
And that energy, because everything is energy, if we're congruent with that energy, because in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in the Bible, it says, without vision, the people will perish. There has to be something there that is these, as you're saying, these images, these thought processes that come as manifest as images, but and what I did for 2 weeks and what you did for the time that you did your incredibly intense study is we became the people that have passed the exam. And it's living in that state as we are the millionaire now. And that's a really interesting way of living life because we start to embody what we want. And weirdly enough, synchronicities happen. We've talked, we have a mutual friend. Everything, the world starts to come together to give you what you want. So it's not for us to reason how, it's to go ahead and do the things that draw it to us. I don't know what your views are on that, but it would be nice to hear a little bit about your thought process.
Yes, like this is one of the things that I talk about all the time. Like when people come to me and they say, "Well, why am I not already at this level? Like, why am I not already there? Because I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this." And I would say, because the version of you that is already there is not the version of you talking to me right now. But this is the difficult thing, though, Deborah, because in theory, this makes sense, right? Intellectually, people can understand, well, you have to act like a millionaire. Yeah, that makes sense. But the thing is that 99.9% of people don't know how to do that. Even though they understand intellectually, you have to become that version of you. Yeah, okay, like how exactly, And so we do a big identity shift for a month as well within the Effortless Framework. Because intellectually, you can watch, as I mentioned earlier, you can read books or watch YouTube videos or whatever, but without really understanding how to embody it, it just stays in the conscious mind. And the conscious mind, the educated mind that's gathering information all the time, is not the part of the mind that is controlling your results. So whilst people, many people understand that concept in theory, they don't understand how to practically do it. Because how can you think, this is a question I get all the time. Like I have clients that go from earning $1 million a year to earning $1 million a month, in less than 8 months. So we're talking quantum leaps, and that isn't normal. because what's normal is gradual, growth and so on. So how can you embody this multi-million identity when you don't have the money? Like, people will say, well, if I was a multi-millionaire, I'd be booking a private jet this weekend to take my partner to Paris. But, how can I do that? How can I act like a multi-millionaire when I'm not? And, if I was a millionaire, then I would be doing this and I would be driving that car and so on. But I'm not. So how can I? And that's where people get stuck. It's like, because, many people have heard this expression that I don't really agree with. Fake it until you make it, right?
Thank
So,
you. I don't really agree with that either. Yeah.
because the thing is that this of fake it until you make it is you're still the same person. You're just pretending to be someone else, but nothing has really changed inside. You're still the same person. And then you start to feel disingenuous. And then you start to feel like you lack authenticity because you're pretending to be someone that you're not. Whereas, my way of working is not, what happens with people who do the fake it till you make it is that they do it for a while and then they give up because it just feels difficult to pretend to be somebody that they're not. And so I do it in a very different way. So I go within and I create that new identity. And then it's a step-by-step process, to move into that millionaire or whatever it is that you want to achieve, that millionaire identity. Because this is what I say to people. People say, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to live this lifestyle. I want to be a multimillionaire. I want to do X, Y, Z. I want to drive this car and live this house. And what I say is, you can't achieve these kinds of results as this kind of person. Now, I don't mean that this person's better. I don't mean that. I just mean in terms of, the type of, the type of person that you're being. So if you want to achieve these results, you must become this kind of person first. And then these results effortlessly happen. And in many, if anyone has a look on my website, guinevereellisinternational.com, there's a page called The Effortless Effect, where we talk, there's lots and lots and lots of success stories. And when you start watching the videos or reading the success stories, you'll find the word effortless mentioned a lot, and magical. One lady even said that I was like a fairy godmother that came into her life, because this is the thing that, when you understand how to become that person, the results then kind of start to happen like out of nowhere. Like, oh my God, how did that even happen?
Yeah.
And it links back to, people talk a lot about manifestation. There's lots of talk about manifesting, in today's kind of era. But I find that the majority of people that talk about manifesting don't really understand how to do it consistently. They might be able to, it might be a fluke that you manifested something once, a parking space or whatever. A lot of people talk about manifesting a parking space. But why would you want to just manifest one thing? If you become this kind of person, you're just manifesting everything you want all the time. So there's an element of my work that is linked in that kind of manifestation, but that's a bonus, a side effect, rather than the core part of it.
Yeah.
So that's my take on that identity, Deborah.
Guinevere, you will be back because you are amazing. And there's no doubt in my mind that working with you in support of our dreams and our aspirations, going through the challenges that we go through, etc., for good reason, so that we can hone our skills and be forged in the fire. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And, you talk to most highly successful in whatever field they may be, and let's not think about money as the be all and end all. There's always been a price, there's always been a sacrifice, there's always been a challenge, and they continue to happen. It's not just that you've mastered it and then you live this breezy life that's all rainbows and bunny rabbits. But it's looking at those challenges in ways which people in that regard look at them and think, right, this is how we deal with them. And thank you so much for delving in just a tiny bit into the world that you offer people within your incredible business. And as I said to anybody who's listening, have a chat with Guinevere. She's a very open, warm-hearted, very understanding and compassionate, loving person. And we only have people on this show who come from a heart-centered perspective, who aren't in it just for how much money can I make out of people. It's how much can we give and contribute to add value to the collective, because then the abundance flows throughout and comes back and forth. It's absolutely brilliant. So, Guinevere, thank you for sharing your beautifully crafted work. And as you said, this has been in the making since you were a very small girl, with that belief system that you thought everybody had. And actually, turns out that it was quite a special belief system, that you went for that role as the head of the aerospace division because you thought that job's mine. That's my job. And that belief and that passion and that innate knowing, that gnosis came across and they hired you. And then you didn't do what some people do and go, oh, crikey, now I really can't cope. You went in and you made more of it so that you continually developed. And here's the thing, I know I've been guilty of it in the past. I've achieved something and then I've been frightened of the success.
Mm.
And I think we can probably talk about that in another episode. Is there anything that you'd like to impart to our listeners now that will help people to understand if they're not completely happy and content with where they are now and how you can help them? I'd love for you to share those nuggets of information before we close so that our listeners can think, yeah, I really do need to have a chat with you.
You know, one piece of advice I would give anyone, including all of your listeners, is, you know, if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening right to the end, when it stops, when it finishes, I would recommend that you sit there quietly for 5 minutes. Don't go off to do whatever else you have to do today, go and put the kettle on or anything. Just give yourself 5 minutes. Get out a piece of paper and just close your eyes and just ask yourself, if anything was possible, what would I love? What do I really want to do with my life? And start writing it out on paper. Because most people say they don't achieve their goals, they don't achieve their vision because they don't have one. So you have to know where you want to go before you can even take one step towards it. And this is one of the things that's been knocked out of us all. We're so busy with day-to-day life, and particularly with the electronic age we live in. We're just, you know, on our phone scrolling and looking at this and that and the other, that we never take time to pause and reflect and think, am I really happy with every area of my life? And you know, this is not just about money, as Deborah mentioned, because, you know, the focus of my work is actually freedom. Money and time recovery are just enablers of that. But it's you know, the key thing, and this is my kind of pivotal, you know, point, I guess, of this whole talk, is that there is no freedom through money or through time if you don't have freedom in your mind, if you don't have that mental peace, that tranquil state of mind. And you can never really achieve that when you're living a life that doesn't bring you joy, because you're in a career and a job and you're not earning enough and you're in substandard relationships that don't fulfill you. You will never really build that peace of mind. And so take some time to ask, if anything was possible, what do I really want? And then take the next step from there.
Wonderful. And how can people get hold of you?
So if anyone's interested in learning about the Effortless Framework and how we can work together, then please do drop us an email at inquiries@guinevereellis.com. Alternatively, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. As your guests, actually, Deborah, I don't mind if they sent me a personal message. It's guinevere@guinevereellis.com. If you have any questions from this podcast, I would welcome, you know, any emails, and I'd be more than happy to give you some pointers.
Wonderful. And everything will also be on the description as well. Guinevere, thank you so much. What an inspiring, enlightening, and positive and doable, actually, conversation that we've had. This isn't just esoteric, or whether this is nice to listen to. This is real stuff that Guinevere can offer here, practical, in-depth, applicable stuff that you can do and move into that realm that you've only just thought, whoa, what if I could do dot, 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 dot. It's wonderful. Thank you. And to all of our wonderful listeners, thank you so much for being here in support of myself and Guinevere and all of our wonderful guests. And if you've liked what you've seen today, please do subscribe. It helps us to promote our wonderful work to others that might just touch them and make such a difference to people in your life as well. So please do like and subscribe. And until the next time, thanks so much for listening. Bye bye now.